Hello again. I'm going to talk to you a bit about Gordon Allport, Hans Eysenck, and Raymond Cattell. This is chapter 7, 8, and 9, I believe. You can look that up. So let's jump right into this thing. Gordon, and again, we're talking about theories of personality, and you'll recognize things to an extent based on what you've already heard and what you've already read. But this may be a little bit out of the ordinary. Let me get my computer situated here. Okay, so let's talk briefly about Gordon Allport. I'm not going to go into a lot of deep discussion about any of this because it's all in your textbook, but this is supplemental to that. So, Gordon Allport, backtrack a minute to what's called the five-factor model personality, and there are four positives and one negative, outgoing, da da da, and then one negative, and that's sort of what Allport had. He only names three things. So in essence, he simplified and generalized. It makes it a little easier to understand. Five factors not hard to understand, but this is a little bit condensed. So let's look at these traits. He has three traits. He names three traits. Common traits. Those are traits that are shared by many people. Now, there's no way to put a number on this. You can't put a number on this. This doesn't work. So, many people. Another way of saying that is in general. Common traits shared by people in general. He doesn't name them. He just expresses that. His next category is called central traits. Now we get a little more. Into identification. So, common traits, general traits shared by many people, central traits, and individual specific traits. Your personality traits. Are you outgoing? Are you introverted? Are you obnoxious? Are you a contemplator? You know what personality is all about. I don't have to explain it to you. I'll have one. So common traits, central traits, and lastly, cardinal traits. These are the dominant traits that people notice about you. These, you've probably heard the expression, first impressions are lasting impressions. Well, this is kind of in play here. Cardinal traits. A person meets you, gets to know you, and what they learn about you right off the bat is kind of what they gauge you by from that point on. So those are your dominant traits. These are the things people see about your personality in the beginning, and then dependent upon how stable that is, then they become central traits that you're identified by. Let me caution you. People project what Jung calls a persona until they're comfortable or not, but they don't necessarily give you their true self. So this personality that you first encounter may not be really anything like their central traits. It depends on whether they're running a front or not. I don't want you to really know me because you may not like me. There's a lot of psychology in this. So let's just leave it alone from that standpoint and say Allport said common traits, central traits, cardinal traits, and cardinal traits are your dominant traits. Central traits are specific to you but not necessarily dominant, and then the individual. Let's jump to Hans Eysenck. Hans Eysenck, he only has three identifications of personality. These are going to blow your mind if you hadn't read this already. Very controversial because two of them are negative. One of them can be negative, so this guy must have been a negative guy, who knows. Extroversion, that's an outgoing, talkative person, but they have the potential of aggressiveness. What's not identified here, and what you will read in your textbook, is an identification of extroversion related to Eysenck. Aggressiveness can be negative, but it can be positive as well. If I'm working on a project with a team, I want the team to be aggressive. The second trait he names is neuroticism. For him to name neuroticism as a dominant characteristic of the human populations, I don't know. There's a lot of argument there. What is neuroticism? It's emotional instability. So I'm not too sure that I think the majority of people are emotionally unstable. However, there are a lot that are unstable. And we don't have time to get into that. And finally, his last category, psychoticism, very negative. Neuroticism's negative. Psychoticism is negative. It's described as aggressiveness and interpersonal hostility. Oh my goodness. Lacking empathy, cruel, and a loner. So, my word, what is he talking about here? Sounds like maybe his view of the human race is pretty seriously negative. And when you look at the news reports, you almost have to agree with him. So, passing thoughts. One semi-positive, two negatives, and I'd like to know more about Brother Hans. Nonetheless, that's his take. I want to talk to you as briefly as I can then about Raymond Cattell and his different view. He gathered a lot of data, and he disagreed with Eysenck. He said, "Man, there's not just three of these things. There's like 16." And I'm gonna run through these fairly quickly. Emotional engage. That's a desire. That's one. The desire to develop intimate relationships with others. These don't occur in any sequential, as far as sequential is concerned. In other words, you don't have to have one to have two before you can have three, etc. It's just the way they're named. So if you are emotionally engaged and you desire to develop intimate relationships, with other people, and the way he lists this is outgoing versus reserved. So that's going to sound a bit like Erickson. Emotional stability. Again, Erickson versus. Emotional stability, how calmly people respond to what life brings or what happens in your life. Calm versus stressed. If you don't suffer stress, there's something wrong with you. And I'm not joking. You are wired to deal with stress biologically, neurologically. Not the kind that kills you, but stress that's what we would term normal stress, paying bills, studying for an exam, stuff like that. Liveliness. How free and spontaneous a person expresses themselves. Spontaneous versus restrained. Again, we know people like this. You know people that are wide open, so to speak. You know people that have little to say, somewhat introverted. He actually breaks down, and these are his characteristics, by the way. The 16 factors are coming. The characteristics that he has named here can be reduced to I don't know if reduce is the right word or not. Explained in 5 global factors. Extroversion, anxiety, toughness, independence, and self-control. So factor all this together and you get emotional engagement, stability, liveliness, whatever the case is. And then these negative sides are included within that range. Now, let's get into these 16, and I'm not going to go through every single one of these. Just want to give you a good idea of what we're talking about. Socially secure. A person who feels at ease in social situations. Uninhibited versus shy. Uninhibited in this sense, is not somebody that's off the chart. This is somebody you go hang out with, and you always have a good time because they're just nutty, within reason. Vigilance. How cautious is a person? How do they view the motivations and intentions of others? And this can be broken down to suspicious versus trusting. So I'm either suspicious of you and don't put any. I'm guarded with you, or I trust you. Maybe to the extent that I shouldn't sometimes. Openness. That's exactly what it says. Discreet versus openness. Again, you have to think of the term of more of an inferiority, kind of a not in the sense of negative, but guarded, I think even is a better word, versus openness. You leave yourself open to criticism sometimes when you do that. And then how open are you to change? That means the extent to which a person enjoys new situations and experiences. Flexible versus connected to the familiar is the catchphrase here. Do I like other cultures, or am I more comfortable within my own circle? That would be what's being named here. Perfectionism, trusting in structure rather than chance. Control versus undisciplined for the catch-all phrase here. Reasoning ability, abstract versus concrete. And I think you're beginning to get the picture. I hope so. Dominance, rule aware, sensitivity. These are just the catch-all words that he has in these 16 characteristics or traits, if you will. And that's Cattell's answer to all this long drawn out theory business. He's probably the most involved of them all. So when you read, be ready, because there's a lot to be said about this Cattell fellow, and especially when you compare his theory to the ones that you've already heard and future ones we're going to be talking about. He's way and far away the most involved of the folk that we'll be talking about. Alrighty, so there you have it.